Hello YouTube, this is Mahadeva the OG Thunder Wizard. Today I am going to start explaining to you what you can expect in terms of how you are going to shift, how you are going to change as you go through the different phases of achieving light body. Now, I use the word sorcery here very specifically. The reason why I use that, let's see, where am I looking for? Am I looking for this one? Yeah. So the reason why I use the word sorcery here is for a very specific reason. I'm talking about the path of actively dismantling the universe and accessing the infinite transformative power that exists there, and using that energy to dynamically change you, transform you into a multi-dimensional being. You can use the word light body, whatever it is. There's two ways of doing it. You're accomplishing the same things, it's just a different path of accomplishing the same thing. You can go the path of the saint, of the bodhisattva, and you can achieve the light body after many, many years of meditation and purifying yourself and asceticism, and I've got nothing against it. In fact, that's part of what we do. We do those kinds of things also. Or you can take the path of the sorcerer who sees this as a science, who sees it as a technology that he can use to change his body. I mean, similar, if somebody wants to become Mr. Olympia these days, you got to take steroids and growth hormones. I don't recommend that, by the way. I don't recommend anybody do that. But if you want to become Mr. Olympia, you got to do that. You want to gain the power with this knowledge, then this is the path of sorcery. Similar to that, you're cheating. You're tapping into the power of the nucleus, the power of the atom, and you are using it to transform yourself. You will get all of the same benefits as the man who spends 40 or 50 years in deep purification and asceticism. You will get all of those same benefits, but you gain, it's just a different path. This is the path of the warrior. So we're going to be talking about those 5 phases. So let me get up the list here. By the way, everything we're talking about, this video is specifically dedicated to my students who are following the Warrior 90-Day Challenge. It's one thing to sit around and talk about it, but I actually give you the techniques to achieve it. And if you my experience is everybody that follows my directions consistently into the letter, they transform on as many levels as you can handle. So can you handle it? How much power can you handle? If you follow my directions, you can achieve what I've achieved. All right, so this is for people who are following the Warrior 90-Day Challenge. All of these other links up here, by the way, are here for you to look into as well. Of course, subscribe and hit the bell button. And the more that you press the like button, the better my channel will do. All right, let's get on with the teaching here. All right, so we're talking about the 5 steps to become a multi-dimensional being. That is what we are looking to accomplish. This takes power. So that's the first step right there. The first step to achieve this, the first phase, is to gain energy. And we're going to gain energy to escape the bubble of perception. So let's talk about that for a little bit. You have chosen to incarnate into this 3-dimensional reality. And in order for this 3-dimensional reality to keep you in the illusion, because that's what it is. I don't say that with any judgment, by the way. So if I talk about the illusion of this life and you have judgment about that, that is exactly the bubble of perception that I'm talking about. So we need to break through that bubble of perception, the limited perception that keeps you in the illusion. If you are somebody who has a judgment around this idea of being trapped in illusion, it means that you are in fact that feeling, that sadness, that pain, that frustration, that feeling trapped. That is an illusion, and that's part of the bubble. That's there to keep you playing the game. You designed this universe that way for that very reason. But if you're watching this video, it means that you also chose to come here to enjoy breaking through that bubble of perception. For you, that is the video game. For some people, the video game is, becoming a Wall Street, mogul. It's becoming President of the United States. It's becoming Mr. Olympia. It's becoming a wife and a mother and a father, mowing the lawn, and whatever it is. For some people, the bubble is to become a bodhisattva. That's their illusion. It's all an illusion. And so, in order to become this multi-dimensional, this being that is able to move beyond limitation and be a multi-dimensional being, to function in multiple dimensions, to live on that higher plane of not just awareness. This is one of the main false teachings I hear, mistaken teachings, that it's all about awareness. And if you change, that's why everybody wants to drop acid and take ayahuasca, so that they can change their perception. It is far more than changing your perception. It is about changing your essence to become a completely different, to be vibrating on a completely different level, because you choose to, not because you took some chemical or did something or believed somebody or something like that. It's that you are doing the work. You have figured out what the specific levers are in your body, in your mind, in your life, that you can manipulate to activate, which will then move you up to that next level. You're taking a proactive step towards changing your fundamental being. But it's not because you got an altered perception, man. It's a lot more than that. That again is part of the delusion as well, that all I have to do is change my perception. All I have to do is change my thoughts. It's a lot more than that. You actually have to change the cells in your body. And that we can choose to do. Your thoughts, your beliefs, all that stuff will change when you change. So, first thing that we're going to do is we are going to gain power to escape the bubble of perception. So gain energy, gain power. We do this through the Qigong exercises. So that's, if you look on the channel there, and I encourage you to do so if you're new to the channel. If you go on the channel and you know how to search within the channel, just type in Qigong. If you want to look on my playlist and you find the Qigong, 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 energy work. This is the first step. This will give you power. This is an expansive power. Qi is expansive. And so if we're going to use the elements here, which we can use, and I'm teaching you, those of you who are doing the 90-day challenge and you're doing the cleansing progression of the elements, this is going to make some sense, because you're going through this. This is the phases that you're going through. The first phase that you go through is the wood phase, the ether phase, gaining energy. This is expansion. And to escape the bubble of perception, you have to expand beyond it. This takes power. Now, to stay in the bubble of perception, the things that you've created in this video game, there are things in it which you are programmed to associate with safety. And so you will become emotionally attached. Your beliefs, your assumptions about the universe. I spend a lot of time hammering away at people's assumptions, their limited assumptions. I spend a lot of time hammering away at people's fear-based victim mentalities. And the majority of the stuff that you see on YouTube that claims itself to be spiritual, in fact, many people have said, how can you say you're so spiritual and be so blinded? Because I don't buy into their limited perception, their fear-based perceptions about our relationship to the universe. So a lot of that's part of the programming. This is what religion does. I mean, from the very beginning, religion wants to encase you in this bubble of perception, which limits your energy, it limits your power. In fact, it takes energy to hold on to these beliefs. But the reason why people hold on to them is because there is this illusion of safety. The illusion of safety. Give you again, talking about spirituality, the religionist comes to you and says, you have sinned against God. Right there, you've already, if you even buy into that, even if they don't come to you with that, they come to you and they talk about that Jesus forgives you of your sins. The assumption is that you've sinned. You first must assume that you are a sinful being in order to need God's love and forgiveness. So even if somebody's coming at you with a message of love, of God loves everybody, God's forgiveness, God wants to forgive you, you already have to accept your limitation. That's the illusion. And that takes up your energy, because the part of you, and listen to me if I'm, listen to your instincts right now. When I tell you, you haven't done anything wrong. Being born human is not a bad thing. There's no punishment involved in simply being born human. Now, I mean, part of you might be really frightened by that thought. That's because you've been taught, in order to be loved, in order to be accepted by God, by society, you don't even know this is happening on an unconscious level, you have to accept this idea that you're sinful and God forgives you. Now, if I tell you that you haven't done anything wrong, God doesn't need to forgive you for anything, on an unconscious level, you think you are blaspheming, that you're rebelling against God, that you're hurting God. You're hurting your pastor. You're hurting your parents. If you come from a religious, ethnic background, like if you're Muslim or if you're Jewish, and it's part of not only your religion, but part of your culture and your heritage and your family, to say that, Jehovah is just the human narcissistic ego. I mean, just by even entertaining that thought, you're already breaking the bubble of perception and you feel guilty. So like I said, there's this illusion that being attached to these beliefs keeps you safe, but it's happening on such an unconscious level. So the first thing we have to do is actually connect to infinity and realize that we are God. That God is something that we can bring into ourselves, and we can realize the God within us, the infinity within us, which is your soul. Your soul is, if you can imagine, the God of the Bible, imagine something 100 billion times stronger than the God of the Bible. That is your soul. So tapping into energy, tapping into the life force energy, which is what we do here in the 90-day challenge when we do the Qigong, or if you don't want to do that, you want to do the free stuff, don't give me any garbage about me having to charge you for anything, because I give it away for free. If you put the effort into it, you can find it. Go onto my channel and practice the Qigong. That will give you step one. It will give you the energy, but you must also, it's not just enough to tap into the energy, because the energy will expand you until you reach your bubble of perception. And if your bubble of perception has any kind of victim mentality, any kind of limitation, any kind of weakness, any kind of attachment to other people, then that's where it'll stop. Your bubble of perception will stop how much energy you can accumulate. and you'll stay there. Nothing wrong with that. As you know, I'm not a Christian, but there is one passage in the New Testament which is actually incredibly accurate, and it's very applicable here. And some of you have heard me talk about it, but it's good to repeat these things. That is, Jesus was walking around doing his thing with his disciples, and he was preaching that the kingdom is within, and etc. Don't look for the kingdom outside of you. The kingdom is within you, etc., etc. Follow me. And a Jewish man, Jesus was Jewish, the character Jesus is supposedly Jewish. A Jewish man runs out of his house and bows down in front of him and says, "Teacher, teacher, I want to follow you, but first let me go bury my parents." To which Jesus responds and says, "Let the dead bury themselves. If you can't reject father, mother, sister, brother, you're not worthy of me." To which the man hung his head in shame and turned around and went back because he wasn't able to do that. Now, you and I read that and it seems very cavalier. You've got to be able to give up everything. But you got to understand that that parable is talking about actually going against everything that you've been taught, breaking your bubble of perception. And for Orthodox Jews, especially back then when this was supposed to have happened, you have to bury whoever dies, you have to bury your parents within 24 hours. You don't do that, you are the worst person that ever walked the planet. You are showing such disrespect to your ancestors, to your parents, to Jehovah, if you don't bury your parents within 24 hours. So him coming saying, "Hang on, I got to bury my parents," was a very reasonable thing because it was going to be done within hours. It would have taken him however long to go through the process, and would have taken him less than a day. Jesus could very well have just said, "Oh yeah, no problem. We'll just hang out here and I'll teach people and you take care of it. You come when you're ready. Take 2 days if you want." That's what he was expecting, because he didn't want him to go through his town before it was too late. And Jesus totally, in the character Jesus, totally destroyed his bubble of perception and said, "Let the dead bury themselves. If you can't reject everything you've been told to accept, you're not worthy of me." And that is talking about this bubble of perception, because Jesus is a symbol of the soul. And that's what the soul demands. You want to be this powerful shaman, this powerful wizard, you're going to have to be willing to destroy everything you think you know to be true, everything you think you know to be right. Your bubble of perception, you've got to be willing to destroy that. Now, you don't have to do that all at once. You'll end up in a loony bin. You can do it step by step, and it's a lifelong process. But this is the first thing that we do, is we start to gain energy through the Qigong exercises that I teach you here in the 90-day challenge. And other places, if you go to courses.thunderwizard.com, etc. If you want to have me do an energy transmission for you, you can go to energyhealing.thunderwizard.com. You need that energy to break through your bubble of perception so that your perception can go beyond your awareness. Now, the difference between what I'm recommending and, say, somebody who thinks shamanism is drinking ayahuasca, yeah, that messes with your bubble of perception, but the problem is that once you break that bubble of perception, it comes back together. You wake up and you shake it off and you detox or whatever, and then your bubble of perception sort of comes back together. This is about completely by your own power, your own volition, taking energy directly instead of having it forcibly released from within you. It's a different thing. Again, you're drinking ayahuasca, whatever it is that you do, you're actually forcing the energy inside of you to expand and release. You have the experience of altered awareness, increased energy, but what's happened, you've actually just released a bunch of your own energy, which you don't get back. You don't get that energy back. It's now gone. Now, the good news is you can get it back through energy work, but it's an illusion. Again, we're breaking past the illusions. You have to be the master of this. So that's step one, to gain power, to escape the bubble of perception. And we do that through the Qigong exercises. All right, so the Qigong exercises, what we're going to be looking at is eventually you're going to need the power to be able to shift and take full responsibility for the illusion that you have chosen to co-create. You are a co-creator of this illusion. Again, it's a necessary thing. You got to do it in order to be human. But the path of the sorcerer, path of the shaman wizard, is to consciously break through that without dying, without physically dying. You transform yourself. You choose to do it. This is why it's the path of the warrior. You know, Castaneda called it living impeccably. So if you've ever read Castaneda, you know, read about what he talks about being impeccable. And he talks about impeccability is about gathering and storing energy, because he said the same thing. In order to change your perception, you need energy. So this is what living impeccably is about, which we won't get into in this video. Okay, so let's move on to phase two. So phase one is gaining energy to escape the bubble of perception. Phase two, obtaining spirit allies in order to transform your ego. So you've heard this. This sounds like something a shaman does. This sounds like something especially a shaman does. Works with spirit allies, works with nature spirits, with animal totems, gaining spirit allies. While all of that is true, that what I just talked about is kind of superficial. Don't get me wrong. I work with celestial masters. There are people, those of you who've been doing the exercises, some of you who've communicated with me have been doing these exercises, in some cases for years. And you're now starting to realize when you do, like the Huul breath, I give it away to you for free, H-U-U-L breath, H, two U's and an L. Type that in. Do that practice for an hour a day, every day. You're going to tap into the power of the earth, the gods, celestial gods, terrestrial gods. Tap into your ancestors. And there are ascended masters out there that want to help change the frequency of your vibration. And this is one of the ways that we do that. We do these energy practices in order to do that. So that's you go beyond just working with this idea of calling forth a totem, which is nothing against that, but then working with the higher vibrational energies that are helping to shift your vibration, your frequency, so you can operate at their level. And there are allies that you can use. In fact, you need to work with them. And this is when we start working with the 5 elements. So as I said, you can use the 5 elements with these lists. So the first one is wood. The second one, which we're on now, is metal. So as you know, we're now going through the cleansing procedure of the 5 elements. So the element of metal is about refining your perception. It's about, if the first element, which is wood, is expansion, the second is contraction. And this way what we're doing is we're learning to decipher. So it may take you months, it may take you years of doing this energy work before you start to become able to perceive when you are actually working with these higher beings. Now, these beings have no interest in whether or not in getting your attention. They don't need your worship. They're there to work. They are working with you. All you need to do is go do the work, and just by doing the work, especially the work that I give you, because we're working directly with the ancestors of this lineage that's coming through me. You're already working. They know who you are. They're down there. They're working with you. And whether you feel them or not, trust me, they're in there. You know, sometimes you'll get an inspiration, a feeling, and you think it came from you. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. They're putting little, helping you to see things, to understand things, shifting, and they don't need any attention from you. But at some point, your perception is going to be refined to the point where you're going to be aware that you are working with other higher energies that are, and, you know, in some cases, shifting your posture, shifting your thought process, giving you ideas. I ask for help all the time when I'm doing these videos. Everything that I teach, I'm asking for help all the time. I think I get some great idea. Lots of my great ideas don't go anywhere. And a lot of ideas that come to me that I go, what the heck is that about? End up being something that turns out to be very transformative for both me and my students. So step 2 is, Step 2 is obtaining spirit allies, working with the 5 elements. And this is about transforming the ego. So, you want to know the difference between somebody who has visions and who talks to the gods and talks to spirits and all that, that are actually false, and the true ones? The difference is when you are transforming your ego, meaning that, what I mean by that is I should say narcissism. People are familiar with the word ego. Ego just means the self. There's nothing wrong with the self. Narcissism, that's different. Moving past and healing beyond our narcissism is part of the process. Now, you can tell when somebody is following a false spiritual path because they get more and more wrapped up in their narcissism. And these would be cult leaders. So cult leaders, a lot of times, cult leaders have spiritual power. They've done step 1. They've expanded their bubble of perception. They have a lot of power. But they haven't then gone to refine their own connection of self, which is the reduction of narcissistic ego. Looking and being honest about their feelings, their agendas. I talk about it all the time. So step 2, you know, once you do step 1, you got to do some critical thinking with step 2. So watch my videos on critical thinking. I won't get into it. But the basis of critical thinking is not seeing things from a scientific perspective. Critical thinking means that you look at yourself and you say, what are my emotional attachments to this subject matter? How am I being influenced away from reality in this subject matter? How am I seducing myself to stay in that limited bubble of perception out of my selfishness, my fear, my narcissism? Narcissus looked at in the water and saw his reflection in the water and lost in it. He could not break away from his just looking at himself. That's narcissism. Ego just means that I have an identity. There's nothing wrong with that. Narcissism is when you get wrapped up in it. So step 2, obtaining spirit allies, working with the 5 elements. The 5 elements all have consciousness as well. You have the 5 elements within you. Working and refining your emotions. Again, critical thinking to help refine your emotions. Working with other beings and other entities, whether it be through mantra or through your rituals, or just by doing the whole breath and allowing the energy to start bringing different understandings to you. Feeling the shift, feeling the change, allowing the ascended masters to put their energy into you and to slightly move you and change you in all kinds of different ways. So that's step 2, which would be corresponding with the metal element, and that is obtaining spirit allies. Number 3, so this would be the fire element. And here we want to merge the finite with the infinite. And this has to do with merging the 2 life force energies that you have within you, Kundalini and Chi. So merging the finite with the infinite. This is where, after you've done the process of refining your, getting rid of your narcissistic ego and connecting to your true identity, your true ego, then what ends up happening is a further maturation where you merge your power of the outside, which is chi, life force energy, and the power of the inside, which is the Kundalini. These are two different energy sources. They're not the same. As you know, if you followed my channel, you've heard me say it a billion times. Kundalini is not chi. If it were, the ancient Vedics wouldn't have created two words for it. Prana, which means life, which means breath. Pranayama means breath work. There's life force energy, which is prana, and then there's Kundalini, which is different. Kundalini is in the spinal column, and it is stimulated. You can stimulate the Kundalini by doing pranayama. And so they can work together. In fact, you can do energy exercises where you're working with both at the same time. But I have to say, in my experience, a lot of people, there's a lot of energy, there's these Kundalini awakening processes out there. And I have to tell you, I can't talk for all of them, but some of them, they just don't know what they're talking about. They don't know the difference between Kundalini and Chi, and there's this this sensationalism around the word Kundalini that people get their ego wrapped up in. And that's not happening for no reason, because the Kundalini is associated with the ego. In fact, the limited ego that allows you to root in this world and have an identity in this world as a single being is a direct result of your Kundalini. The Kundalini is in the spinal column, and when it is activated, and by the way, it is activated by life. Activating it through doing yogic postures is really an illusion. Yes, you're activating meridians and you're using breath, but it's really the mental functioning and changes that happen as a result of stimulating those external levers in your body and in your nervous system that gets you to change your relationship to the idea of yourself. That's what activates the Kundalini. Kundalini travels up the spine and goes through the 7 major lessons that you must learn in order to become a mature individual who has the ability to, on the one hand, be limited in space-time and still also be infinite. And then you become multi-dimensional. People talk about awakening the Kundalini, and the Kundalini has to go up the spinal column and it comes out the crown chakra, and people think that's enlightenment. No, it's not. Because once it hits the crown chakra and you go to that space where you've achieved emptiness and oneness with everything, you still has to come back. So true Kundalini awakening is it travels up the spine and then travels back down and goes back down through all of the lessons, and then you become fully mature. The root is about security. The sexual center is about superficial identity. The third is about identity and power. The fourth chakra is about connecting to others through spiritual means. The fifth chakra is about speaking your truth, being an island unto yourself. The sixth chakra is about merging your perception of your it's all about, as you can see, the theme here is about finite versus infinite. And then you have the crown chakra, where it's about achieving ultimate union. But that isn't spirituality. There are people, if you get trapped up here and that's all you are, you're useless. You're useless to the rest of the world. You're just in samadhi, and good for you. But now you got to bring yourself back down. That's a whole other process. Having that spiritual awakening and then bringing yourself back down so that you can apply that spiritual awakening so you can be a multidimensional being. You can be fully human and fully infinite and divine at the same time. So this is the power of fire. Kundalini is fire. Chi is fire. The ego is fire. And by refining the fire element, by learning how to destroy the negativity in the illusion of the self, then you're able to be multidimensional, merging the infinite with the finite and not judging either, because they're both illusory, both of them. All right, then we go to the fourth phase. By the way, so each one of these things are processes that you're doing. This is the whole point of this video, to help you understand, those of you who are going through the 90-day challenge. These are things that you already know that you're doing. And the first phase is when you're working with the Qigong energy. Now you do that in the phase one, you're doing that. You're doing Kundalini work as well. You're doing all of it, but there's a big focus on the Qigong, which is connecting you to power, making you feel empowered, making you feel safe, giving you the strength and the confidence to take action towards what your soul wants, which, as you know, is what it's all about. And then in the second phase, working with the 5 elements. Working with the 5 elements is the same as working with spirit allies, because the 5 elements have their own power, and you have those 5 elements within yourself. Working with your 5 emotional energies, balancing them, and learning how to transform your emotions. Not to escape them, not to suppress them, to experience them as energy and transform that energy. This is in the second step, which you guys, many of you are already doing. In the third, we're merging the Kundalini and the Chi. So this is something that, this is something that I've worked at for a long time in my practice. And I've done, all kinds of different practices. As you know, I was a Kundalini yoga teacher for a while. I just did Kundalini yoga for a while, and I taught that. And as you know, I was just a Qigong practitioner, and I did that. But you're not supposed to mix the two. And I don't recommend it, by the way. I don't recommend mixing traditions, especially when you start getting into real power. If you're practicing my stuff, talk to me first before you want to mix it. You shouldn't, there's plenty with what I'm giving you. You don't need to. You're going to get the benefits of all of it, in my experience anyway. So that's what we're doing. If you know the 90-day challenge, you're doing those yogic postures and that yogic breathing. I give you that mantra, and as well, I'm giving you the Qigong as well. When you combine that, in my experience, the combining of working with Qi power, the Qigong, and working with the Kundalini, by merging those two, you end up having, it's not just like 1 + 1 = 2. It's like 1 + 1 = 1 billion. You end up with far more energy to create your reality. Now you're starting to deal with real power. So one of the things that Qi power does is it gives you real power to accomplish things. It gives you real motivation. It gives you real confidence. You feel that. Those of you who've done it, you feel more comfortable within yourself. You feel like you don't need to sleep as much, or you don't need to eat as much food, or you don't need as much sex, or you don't need as much love and attention. Don't get me wrong. Please enjoy all of those things. But one of the things that Qi will give you is it will give you that feeling of being nourished and empowered within yourself. You don't need so much of things outside of you anymore. Kundalini, when you start working with Kundalini through mantra especially, mantra and yogic, so I'm combining all of these things. I'm doing Qigong in there with you in the 90-day challenge. I'm doing some of the Kundalini, very simple Kundalini yoga postures and movements, which are stimulating the Kundalini. And what was the third one? And mantra. Mantra is a very powerful science. And again, do not go out picking up mantras off the internet. I don't recommend that, because you have no idea what planets you're stimulating. And based on your chart, it might not be what you need. If I give you a general one, it means that it's an all-purpose one. You can go ahead and use it. But when you work with a mantra, you are now vibrating Kundalini at a very specific vibration just for you, which is going into your unconscious mind, and it's starting to release the false assumptions and programs that you have, your self-limiting uh, self-destructive, self-sabotaging programs that you were programmed with in order to function in society. In order to function in society, society is going to program you with self-sabotage and shame and limitation. That's just part of it. We just learn how to deal with it. We just learn how to tolerate it. But that's why people end up getting sick and dying. They end up dying of the old age, illness, and stuff like that. What we're supposed to do is we're supposed to live out our life. This is my goal. God willing, knock on wood, I'll be able to do it. We'll see. I'm human just like you, but so far, I'm doing pretty good. But the idea is that you live your life, and you live your life fully and healthily and happily. You've got a healthy body, you've got a healthy mind, and then one day you just go to sleep and you don't wake up. When that happens, that's somebody who has been given the ability to live within their power, to function really well. That's where we want to go with this. So when you're doing the mantra work, among other things, the mantra work goes in and gets rid of, at the very least what will happen, it'll bring to your awareness some of the limitations. This is why some of you, when you're doing this work, again, this is some pretty powerful stuff. You start to have a lot of feelings, and you start to have a lot of uncomfortable feelings. It's because all of those things that were programmed into you to keep you, a good machine, a good cog in the machine. Now you're starting to wake up to your true essence and your true reality, and it's painful and it's frightening. Because, like that parable I said, the guy says, Master, let me bury my parents. And he says, let the dead bury themselves. If you can't, if you're not willing to reject mother, father, brother, sister, dog, aunts, uncles, for the sake of the soul, then you're not worthy of the soul. And so this is what we're doing when we're combining these two energies, which is what, just by doing that 90-day challenge practice, you're already doing that. All right? So once again, for those of you who are doing it, if you're starting to feel a lot of stuff come up, I know the feeling. It makes you want to stop, makes you want to do something else. It makes you want to run away. It makes you want to obsess. Like me, I obsess over surfboards. It makes you want to do something to distract yourself away from this process, which is bringing you back to your authentic, true self. The limited self is going to fight all the way. And that's okay. That's its job. Its job is to keep you there. Now imagine being a multidimensional being where you can enjoy being a limited human being in this limited delusion, this Maya that you've created, and also tap directly into the infinite and be able to be in both worlds at the same time and be comfortable about it. That's where we're headed with this. All right, so that's step 3, which is the fire element merging infinite spirit with finite, which is merging Kundalini and Chi together. Now, there's another energy that I'm going to be introducing to you. I've already started introducing it to you, but I'm going to start introducing it to you, and this is the power of the heart mind. And here what we're going to do is we're going to awaken the emperor. So this is what takes this to another level. I didn't know for years what was different about what I was doing. I knew that it was different. I had been taught a very specific spiritual practice and science by people who were telling me, don't talk about this with anybody. This is secret, sacred stuff. And if you start, don't show it to people, don't talk about it. And, especially don't talk to Chinese people about it because they will shun you. And it was hard for me to believe at first, but I proved it to myself. I went and, mentioned to a couple of Chinese people the sect that I worked with, and they went, and they would turn around and just walk away and never talk to me again. A Taoist abbot, this master, ascetic monk, when he found out the sect I was working with, he refused to let me into his studio after, the day before, letting me in and showing me around and being all. Then once he found out the sect I was working in, he said he wouldn't even talk to me. And that's because the power of this art. And so what we're going to do once you've done these first three things, actually we're all doing it all together, but I'm breaking it down so that you understand. You work with chi, you work with Kundalini, and then we work with the heart mind. And specifically the feminine lightning power that surrounds the heart. Because the soul, your spirit inside of you, is the most powerful thing in the universe. It is God. It is the king. It is the emperor of everything. And to tap into that power while being human is challenging, and it can be dangerous and exciting and wonderful. And you start tapping into real power. This is the power of the sorcerer, the wizard. That's why all those other Taoist sects were so desperately afraid of that, of those specific heart-mind warriors, because they knew that whatever power they had, and Taoists are very powerful magicians, whatever power they had was nothing compared to the stuff that they dealt with. And so they would call it evil and bad and black magic. And until you've tapped into that power, you won't know what I'm talking about. If you have tapped into it, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the normal left-hand path that most people talk about. Most, forgive me for sounding judgmental, but my experience of most of Western magic, what they talk about the left-hand path, that's not what we're talking about. Left hand means feminine. And feminine is pure power. Masculine is strength. The feminine is power. That's why in the ancient fairy tales in Europe, the being that you needed to be afraid of the most was the witch. It wasn't the sorcerer. So the modern day mythology of the Lord of the Rings, you have this masculine sorcerer, Sauron. But that's because in modern times, people have mistaken strength for power. But in times past, it was the wicked witch. And in other cultures, they're starting to lose it. But in some of the traditional cultures, even their modern mythology, what is that? Something hidden dragon. You know what? The Chinese martial arts movies that come out. The bad guy is a woman. She's got all the power. It's because the Shakti, the feminine, is the power of the nucleus, the sun. Originally, in all spiritual traditions, if you go back far enough, you will find the sun is feminine and the moon is masculine. Now, the truth is that both sun and moon are both masculine and feminine. It just means we have shifted our attention. But the center of the sun is the center of emptiness, and it is the source of all life on this planet. And that nuclear power, the shunyata, my ancestors called the sun sunna. Same thing, shunya, sunna. It's the same word. And it means the power of emptiness. And emptiness doesn't mean empty like there's nothing there. It means pure potential. If you were to walk into the center of the sun, assuming you could do that, you would be obliterated. Because the power of the incredible gravity is crushing those hydrogen atoms, which is creating nuclear fusion, which explode. That's the sun. The sunlight that hits you, that's nurturing everything, is the power of nuclear fusion. That's why you can't be in the sun for too long. That's why if we didn't have our magnetic field protecting us, the radiation from the sun would kill us. That's the power of the feminine. This is the power you're tapping into when you tap into the true heart mind. And it won't reveal itself on its own. You have to know the levers. You have to know how to physically. This is what makes it sorcery as opposed to just spirituality. We are physically manipulating our body to move in certain ways, to set off switches which go in there and start to release that nuclear energy that is surrounding the soul. It starts to release this infinity. This is why as I said, these guys were looked on with such fear. And this is the only Taoist tradition that was started by a woman. So here we have that same thing, the wicked witch. They're afraid of that power. Men are afraid of women's power. And so that's why we live in a society that struggles with patriarchy, because the masculine is afraid of the feminine. Now the feminine has bought into it. And so those of you women that are shaking your heads going, yes, we're victims, you've bought into it. We can talk about that. We'll save that for another time. But this is where we're in step 4 now. We're now in the element of water. So we've gone wood, expanding to expand your bubble of perception. Metal, you're now working with spirit allies to refine your perception of yourself, of your identity. And then third, fire, you're now purifying your identity. And then now we're using the water, which is the power of the feminine, to nourish. Now that we've created this fire of purification, we have to balance it with water and nourish it. And this is the heart mind. This is why compassion and the heart go together. This is the heart mind. But the heart mind is really the source of your ability to intend your reality. The ability to use your emotions, your true emotions, not arbitrary manufactured emotions like they teach you how to do in the law of attraction. That's seriously, I mean, you know my thoughts about that. That's at best, it is superficial at best. But usually it's just nonsense. But one of the reasons it's so attractive is because it's true. Your emotions have this power. But you have to get to your true emotions. You won't know what that is until you tap into your soul. And so when we unlock, we physically do exercises and movements and postures. You're already doing the whole breath posture is one. All the mudras that I give you, all of these things are tapping into it and unlocking it. That's why there are people who have been Qigong masters their whole life, and they do one of my celestial Qigong exercises. I just got, not too long ago, somebody emailed me and said, I've never experienced anything like this. In fact, the high level of vibration, I forget the word that he used, but something along those, the purity of it was something he'd never experienced. That's because these are very specific levers and techniques that used to be forbidden, that only those who had been initiated and allowed to learn this had to learn, but you had to not tell anybody. Well, we are in very challenging times. And unless people are able to unlock this power to change their perception and change their vibration, we could, who knows? I won't finish that sentence. So that's the fourth, which is the water element. Ironically, it's the water element that opens up the fire of the lightning that gives you true power of the infinite spirit. And then we get to the fifth, which is we can associate with earth. And this is activating the phoenix power of full transformation. So once you awaken the emperor and you activate the heart mind, you're not out of the woods. The heart mind can very easily become diluted. The heart mind, all along the way, there are safety measures, just like a video game. Once you get to the next level, there are new dangers you have to worry about. And so with power comes responsibility, and with power also comes new pitfalls, new illusions, which all have to do with the ego, with the narcissistic ego. When I use the word ego like that, I mean narcissism. It's narcissism, this is why I'm constantly talking about people's unconscious narcissism. And why I talk about how, narcissism is just, religion is just about worshiping one's own narcissism. Politics, And what I mean by politics is not just the politicians, but people who are really, into politics. People who go on and watch, doesn't matter which one it is, MSNBC or Fox News, whichever one you want. You're people who are really talking about those people this and those people that, or they're the best. That's your narcissism. People who are absolute Trump fans. I mean, I really want to sit you down and say, let's take a look at your narcissistic projection here. People who, the Antifa crowd, if you want to go on the other, because that's really, you got Trump and you got Antifa. Fascism and, full-blown communism. Social, negative aspects of socialism. These are two sides of the same coin, and they're both, if you take out the specifics, like if you talk to an Antifa person and you take out whatever it is that they're against, and you put in the word Trump, they'll sound exactly like a Trump follower. You take a Trump follower and you take out the word Trump and replace it with, whatever buzzwords Antifa guys use, you won't be able to tell the difference. It'll sound exactly the same because it is the same. It's their narcissistic ego. So when we awaken the power of the phoenix, you now must look at your narcissism and die to your narcissism, and like the phoenix, rise from the ashes, the earth. So when we're talking about the elements in this progression, we have the wood, which is the wood comes out of the ground, which is your life force coming into being and doing. And then comes metal. Metal chops it down. So that's when you're just full of yourself, and then life starts chopping you down, and you have to refine, who you are and what you are, and be more perceptive about life. And then with that perception, then you start to refine the edges through the fire. You start burning away and really molding who you are and getting rid of the negativity within yourself. And then that gives you the ability to unlock your true potential, which is your heart mind. So we've gone through wood, metal, fire. Water nourishes the true heart mind. And that water goes into the earth after the ashes of everything have gone in to create the soil. And from that arises the phoenix. Phoenix arises from the ashes. This represents you dying to your narcissism, and your spirit, which is the phoenix, rising from the earth to achieve your true spiritual potential, which is, if you're in the body, the idea is to be both finite and infinite, to be in infinite, multiple dimensions. And let me just be clear, this has everything to do with doing the practices. It's not talk. If you're coming onto my channel and all you're doing is listening to me talk, you're just getting the intellectual part of it. Nothing wrong with that, but it's ultimately not going to lead you anywhere. The intellect is not what we're here to connect with and to empower, but to use the soul. As you know, I'm very intellectual, so I'm not saying to be an idiot. But this is about an experience. When I'm done recording this, I'm going to go down and I'm going to do my practice, and I'm going to do my postures and my movements, and I'm going to trigger those switches within my meridians, which will tap me into that power, which I'll feel in my body. And I do it for that reason. I do it for the feeling that I get from it. I get all the other benefits, all of the spiritual and emotional and psychological changes and benefits from it. But I do it for the physical power. Now again, that's me. Other people have other ways that they do it. But the healing that comes, the physical healing that comes, the spiritual healing, and this is really, what I'm trying to offer you, is I'm trying to offer you a path where it's not like religion, where I feel comfortable because it's written in the word to feel this and to believe this, and my pastor told me this, and all of my fellow churchgoers are around me and they're reflecting back, and I'm safe and I'm loved. And no, this is about tapping into the power of infinity that goes beyond the universe. You can feel it, the infinity flowing through your body. You can feel the health, you can feel the power, you can feel the confidence, and you have it in your body. You can do things with it. I don't know what your powers are going to be. I've seen some of the powers that I've able to achieve and accomplish with this stuff. I don't play around with that stuff anymore, but I did. But you might become a healer. You might be able to touch people and heal them. You might be able to speak a word and transform people. You might be able to see into the future. You might be able to see into the past. You might be able to leave your body and go to other dimensions and come back. I don't know what your powers are going to be, but you'll be able to feel it and experience it and have it transform you. You no longer need to be limited. You no longer need to worry about death or the afterlife or people or health. You know, when you get to the source of this, you don't even have to follow a path. You don't have to, do any of that. Your spirit knows exactly what to do and where to go. You'll be bulletproof, meaning that you will flow through life, even though everything, and I mean that literally, war zones, famine, pestilence, whatever the heck that happens, you will flow through it as though you're just immune to all of it. And that is because you are a multidimensional being and you're no longer held captive by this limited illusion. And I have no judgment against this illusion. I love this illusion. I love playing here. I'm going to miss it when I leave. I'm going to miss all of the beautiful things that are here. As I'm already, as I'm getting, 57, I'm starting to see 60. I'm starting to go, gosh, man, youth is really wasted on the young. With the knowledge that I have now, if I had a 25-year-old body ahead of me, boy, what I wouldn't accomplish. Of course, I'd probably get trapped into the limitation of being 25 again, but you get where I'm going here. I'm offering this to you, and I'm doing everything in my power to teach you the most powerful, the most transformative techniques so that you can experience this for yourself. And there's more coming. I'm working right now and experimenting. In fact, I'm going to do it as soon as I turn this video off. I'm going to go experiment with how to reverse engineer what I've been given and make it even more easily accessible. You just flip this switch, do this, breathe this way, feel this power, and then you and I together get to go through the psychological and spiritual and emotional transformation. And that's my job as your teacher if you choose to be my student, my apprentice. And we do that together. So that's it. Let's take a look again at all the phases here. First thing you're going to do is you're going to gain energy by doing the Qigong practices, whether it's the free stuff or any of the other stuff that I have offered. This will help you to escape the bubble of perception. You'll understand that if you haven't already when you look at Escaping the Matrix videos that I have. You can obtain, in step 2, spirit allies, which is working with the elements, working with the gods, working with the ancestors, working with the ascended masters. And this is to transform your limited ego so that you can begin to connect to your infinite self. Now, once you've tapped into the fact that you know that you're infinite, in order to transform your human self, you must merge the finite with the infinite. And for that, we use the powers of Kundalini, which is the emotional, psychological, ego energy, and we use that with the infinite external power of Qi, so that we can begin to merge these two within ourselves. And then I introduce to you the sacred and secret power of the Shin, which is the heart mind. And this is something that can only be truly activated if you have the proper techniques. And this is awakening the emperor. You no longer are just a spiritual practitioner. You become the emperor. You become God in the flesh. And this happens through activating this energy through the exercises that I'm teaching you in the 90-day challenge. And then you activate the Phoenix power, which is full transformation. This is the power of mastery that comes from using all of those previous 4 steps to actually transform yourself. So as you see there, you go to the thunderwizard.com and you click around for Warrior 90-Day Challenge. And I welcome that. I'm going to really start pushing to really expand the Patreon subscription so that, imagine if we had an army of people. Imagine what the world would be like if we had an army of people doing these practices. To have the ability, and we're going to start working towards having the ability to change through your spiritual practice, through your intentions, through your self-transformation, literally changing the collective unconscious. I mean, if you were like me, you look at the world and you see how lost everybody is, how damaged people are, and how damaged the world is becoming with all these billions of people on this planet. You then will have the power to do something to influence that, while you also look at how you get to transform yourself. All right? So that's it. 90-Day Challenge, thunderwizard.com. Click around for Warrior 90-Day Challenge. Subscribe, hit the bell button, smash the like, because the likes help me. I'm resurrecting some things, the courses.thunderwizard.com, if you want to find my books, my videos, all of the things that I offer. There's no shortage of things that I offer. Go check those things out. And if you want an energy transmission from me, you want to kickstart towards this, you can go to energyhealing.thunderwizard.com. And perhaps you'll feel it, perhaps you won't, but you can get that service from me. I'm ready to do work now. Let's make 2021 the year where we come out of this nonsense we've been in for such a long time. All right, that's it, my friends. Thank you so much. Best of luck to you. Stay safe. I'll see you all when I see ya.